Great.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Good afternoon to all. We are on another Istanbul Aydın University Blockchain Talks, and today's panelist guest speaker is Mrs. Victoria Solzit, and she is the CEO and the founder of PCB Angels, which makes the payments and the financial world easier. So we would like to welcome Victoria and give the floor to you. And we are very enthusiastic to listen to you.
Of course. Thank you very much. And I'm very excited to join you today. Thank you very much for the invitation. I prepared a little bit of a presentation here for us so we can just go through. I can introduce myself, obviously what my company does and what is my connection to blockchain and obviously the crypto assets. So I think you need to allow me to share my screen, but in the meantime, I can actually just start talking about maybe myself, that my name is Victoria Soltis, and yes, that's true. I'm the founder and the CEO of PSP Angels. PSP stands for Payment Service Providers. And I actually started up as an accountant a long time ago, back in Cyprus, starting with incorporating of companies and providing fiduciary services as well as accounting and audit for clients. And that's when I get to know the higher risk clients. These clients are higher risk because many verticals, unfortunately, have greater difficulties to get accepted by banks and payment service providers, simply because there is a regulatory framework around what they are doing, for example, gambling or investment brokerages, or simply because a couple of countries are not allowing those kind of activities for whatever reasons. I'm talking about adult entertainment or gambling services, for example. So these clients have a great difficulty to find accounting and banking and payment service provider services many times. So even if they ask their accountant of how to find those banks and merchant accounts for their activities, how can they collect money from their clients, how can they transfer money from one account to another, they might have great difficulties to find a provider who wants to work with them and wants to take the compliance risk. So those are the companies that we try to help. I think I still cannot share my screen. I'm not quite sure that what's happening. If you please help me out. But long story short, I actually started to deal with blockchain projects and blockchain payment-related activities back in 2017 when there was a huge haze about ICOs, initial coin offerings, when the projects started to collect money funding their coins, which is obviously a higher risk activity from the banking perspective. So since then, as my job as a payment consultant, obviously I need to understand what is happening on the market in terms of crypto assets, what is the taxation of these crypto assets in different jurisdictions, how are the limitations to move these crypto assets around the world between different banks, who are the crypto-friendly banks who are taking those kind of payments. So this is my involvement in the blockchain community. And obviously I'm myself, I'm quite enthusiastic about what the future holds for us in terms of, blockchain and how to maximize the opportunities of these crypto assets. So that is the reason why I'm having this chat today. For whatever reason, I still cannot share the screen, but don't you worry, I can actually start my little speech about how to accept payments via crypto and what are the new ways to collect the different payments. So we need to start understanding what is happening on the market. How does crypto and the blockchain affecting the traditional banking means, and how this new online world is actually affecting everything what we do nowadays. There are a lot of online shops now which are targeting global audience. Instead of the local shops where you used to go and buy whatever bread and and breakfast in the morning, and it's local. It can be connected to a certain jurisdiction. They understand what is a taxation, what is a VAT, exercise on those kind of change of goods and services. Nowadays, many shops are going online. And the problem with these global targets that there is a different kind of taxation, a different kind of means of payment preferences. So the world truly became global and therefore harder to manage for the society and obviously for the governments. So when we are talking about
Victoria, sorry for interrupting you. Can you try again to share the screen?
Now we are on. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the online world that I started. So yes, advisory and consulting services are also a very problematic aspects of this issue. Because when you are consulting to a different country, obviously the taxation means are completely different, and it's very hard to justify that the service indeed has been given. So it's a good opportunity in case someone wants to commit money laundering, or they want to justify the source of funds. How did you become a millionaire? While I just started consulting online and poof, next thing I know, I'm a millionaire. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And we see an increased number of the so-called digital nomads who are working from everywhere, who have the opportunity to pick and choose where they will, or where they want to submit their tax returns and obviously run their home company from. So that is the same time when the crypto payments became very, very popular for the obvious reason, because it is facilitating a much easier movement of funds between different countries. It is much, we will talk about it later, but it is much easier, cheaper, quicker, and more seamless than the traditional payment methods. But as well as it has a lot of benefit of that, obviously it comes with some downsides as well, which the increase of the dark web payments, when people are taking payments for certain kind of products and services that they shouldn't. So this all over results a very big concern for the banks. And that's why the rating for these kind of companies, these kind of digital nomads, freelancers, online shops, and as we mentioned, the advisory and consulting services means a much higher risk for the banks to deal with. Mm-hmm. But why is it? Now, the most important thing to understand that the government cannot be there everywhere. And obviously people don't like to pay tax, right? If I can reduce my taxes, of course, I'm doing everything in my means to do so. So the government shifted this responsibility for the payment institutions. So they say that if you are a licensed payment institution, it's your responsibility to make sure that everybody is paying their taxes. How do you do that? Well, as a payment institution, you need to have a so-called compliance in place. So that means you need to check every single amount which is coming from different banks. It doesn't mean that you trust those banks, because you will still get the penalty if something goes wrong. So even though that I can say that, but my money is already cleared on a German bank account, I just want to transfer it to Cyprus, maybe the Cypriot bank might not have the trust towards that German bank's compliance enough to blindly believe that, yes, everything was done correctly. And this is what we see, how this compliance is taking longer and asking more and more questions. So bottom line is that the compliance is there to help governments make sure that everybody is paying all their taxes and all the local taxes are also enforced. Also, we mentioned that all income can be traced, which is not necessarily the situation when we are talking about crypto assets, and we will mention that later why. And also the most important thing is taxes is one thing, but when we mention dark web, obviously banks are responsible to make sure that all the money which is going through their accounts is resulting from doing legal businesses. So what's the issue? Well, the current situation is that we have to use those banks. For those reasons, we are no longer allowed to buy a house on cash, buy a car on cash, transfer more than 10,000 euros in our pocket to travel around the world. This is the reason, because we need to make sure somehow that people are paying their taxes, and what we cannot trace, which is the cash payment, obviously it imposes much higher risk to encourage these kind of activities. So we are forced to use the banks. And the banking, as you mentioned, is a tool for the government to regulate these kind of activities. So the bank will get the penalty if we do something wrong. So the banks are making us to pay for the higher fees of their compliance work, because obviously someone needs to do this kind of work. They need to have a salary for that. So that's why who's going to pay for it? Obviously the clients. So this is when we see a negative interest instead of having interest on my deposits. So instead of I'm putting the money in the bank so the bank can use it and invest it and earn money on it, and I'm getting an interest on a fixed deposit account, for example, now we see that more and more e-money institutions, payment institutions, banks, or any kind of financial company is charging me just to have my money with them. Why? Because they have a cost with that to check if I'm doing everything legal. So the banking relationship nowadays is more likely to be built on a trust, and the prices, what we see, are very, very subjective, unfortunately. And that's the reason that it's hard to be objective when it comes to payments. Some payments are going through, some payments are getting rejected, some companies get accepted. So it's a bit of a mess out there. And always we need to understand that there is always risk when we are dealing with payments, even the traditional financial methods, or when we are talking about crypto assets, blockchain transactions. Be always careful that there is always a risk when it comes to your payments. So you always have to have a second pair of eyes of what's happening. So let's talk about what's happening when we are paying via crypto. First of all, there's a confusion. I don't think that I'm saying anything new. But there's a huge confusion from the government, from the banking institution, and even from the users of how to make the most out of this new opportunity of using crypto assets as a form of a payment. The banks and the governments are simply not ready. They don't understand this technology. They don't have the tools to check what's happening. They need a lot of training. I'm just talking about, for example, the 60-year-old tax officer who is working in the tax office for the last 40 years. It's very hard to train these people in a level when they really understand what's going on and they can audit these kind of transactions. They simply don't have the tools and the skills to check many, many things. And also we need to mention that there is a huge problem with the time and the gain problem. So for example, when you have a cold wallet and you placed some Bitcoin on that back in 2005, and now you want to cash it out, many times that exchange doesn't even exist. It's very hard to justify the source of funds. And you can just go to the bank and tell them that I've got so much money. From where? Well, I found this cold wallet and all of a sudden I have a lot of crypto in that. I just want to, justify this. Unfortunately, the bank is going to reject it. So it's very hard to clear out the money on a bank account, which allows you obviously later on to enjoy those kind of assets, buy a house, buy a car, and so on and so forth for the previously mentioned reasons. So using a crypto has a lot of benefits. As we mentioned, it's quick. It should be quick. Obviously, it's much quicker than the banks, I have to say that. It's traceable because we are talking about the blockchain. So on the blockchain, you can really trace back every single Bitcoin to the point when it was mined. So it should be a good opportunity to trace all those funds. There are no more questions when we reach there technologically that what is the source of funds, because that's the whole point of the blockchain. It's traceable, it's understandable where the money is coming from, and it should be cheaper than the banks. I mean, I'm not mentioning anything about what's happening in the gas prices lately with the Ethereum network, but that's the whole idea, that it's much cheaper to actually execute those transactions. And also there is a pro, which was the basis of the blockchain and the basis of how we utilize these crypto payments to the maximum, that it is anonymous, but also the contra is that it is anonymous, right? So for anyone who wants to trace these and understand who is having those kind of crypto assets, it could be a problem as well as it's the benefit. And just to mention a couple of more problems and issues with the crypto assets, that also it's non-regulated or partly regulated. So if you're thinking about, there are 300 countries in the world, everybody is changing the regulation on a daily basis. There are details, there are new legislations coming out on the daily. It's very hard to follow up what is happening on the market at the moment. And as we mentioned, mainly from the tax and the government aspects, it's very hard to understand from the perspective of the traditional way of thinking. So if you're coming from a traditional banking methods, you need a lot of training and you need a lot of technical knowledge to really check and understand how to use those kind of blockchain tools to see where these sources are coming from. And for many, it's hard to verify the source. It should be easy, blockchain.com, check the hash, where the money is coming from. But for many, it's still hard to verify the source. So maybe that's also the reason that there is some issues with the mass adoption at the moment. And as we mentioned, there are a lot of tax issues around it. There is no universal agreement on the status of the crypto assets. So how does it motivate me? I will go where there is a least amount of tax. So today I might be in Portugal, then tomorrow I might be in Dubai, and I might go to any other jurisdiction which has a looser or less regulation around my crypto assets, just to make sure that I'm paying less tax. Is it good? Definitely not. Is it harming the government, which should collect the taxation legally and in a justified manner for the activities that you're executing from a certain jurisdiction? Meaning, if you are in Germany, you have a company in Germany, you should pay taxes in Germany, you should adhere to the regulations of Germany, you should pay the German VAT. It's not really fair to actually go and take your business elsewhere just because you enjoy less taxation on that. So there are still no universal agreement on the state of the crypto assets. We don't know if it's treated as an asset or an investment. We don't know if we have any capital gains on that. Do you have to pay income tax on the volatility of the different rates and the gain on your exchange or not? And as we mentioned, that there are rapid changes. There is a lot of change that good luck to keep up to date with that. There are whole law offices which were specialized in keeping track of all the rapid changes of different countries in regards to the crypto assets. And I brought you today to a very interesting case study, which happened to me in my consulting. The first case is that I was called by a gentleman who bought Bitcoin back in 2013 on an exchange, which doesn't exist anymore. It was a very, very old exchange. It was back at the time. And he stored this crypto on a cold wallet ever since. And actually, he reached out to me last year when the Bitcoin prices were sky high. And he told me that, that's it, Victoria, now is the time. I want to cash out over 1 million worth of Bitcoin. But if I'm working in the traditional bank and I want to tell them that, listen, guys, I'm expecting a lot of money from exchanging my crypto to the traditional fiat, and I want to live happily ever after, they tell me no. So what is the issue? How we can overcome this problem? So I mentioned to him, obviously, everything that I mentioned to you. There are a lot of banking and a lot of tax issues around it. And when we are talking about this amount of money, it's very important to understand that the government might not have a clear understanding of the case at the moment. So the best is to actually ask for a tax ruling, which is basically you're writing a letter to the tax office and you're asking them that if this is the scenario, this is the amount, how can I prove that the funds are from a legit source? And obviously, what is the tax that I have to pay on that? So how we resolve this problem is that we, as the tax ruling from 3 different countries, one was Cyprus, the other country was Portugal, and the third country was Dubai. And Cyprus and Portugal, being in the European Union, had some delay on replying and had some kind of answer that we did not really expect. So the reason was that the gentleman actually went to Dubai and cashed out the money there. Now the problems might start later when I'm no longer involved, in case that he wants to bring back those funds to Europe. So if you're cashing out, let's say in Dubai, and this Dubai is non-European Union, bringing the funds back to the European Union has this next set of compliance difficulty. You still need to find banks who are crypto friendly, who are happy with the source of funds. So cashing it out and keeping it in an account outside of Europe does not mean that he will be able to spend it happily ever after in Europe. And there was another very interesting case study when the company in Cyprus was filing a tax return for 2019. And this company got paid in crypto from offshore partners. And this is not an unexpected case, because back in 2019, many people started to use the Bitcoin. Obviously, it was a preferred method when some invoices needed to be paid, but the company obviously wanted to make sure that they are doing the right thing and declare it on the tax return. The good thing, what happened with the company, that they didn't hedge and they get some gain from the exchange difference. So that was quite a substantial amount of money that they earned in this case. But the source of funds was not really accepted by the banks. As a matter of fact, the bank put them in a higher risk category just because of this very transaction, and they ended up actually paying more bank charges than before. So this is also a food for thought, that does it really risk to jeopardize your existing banking connections just by introducing a new crypto asset exchange on your bank account, just to connect your activities with anything crypto related, because many banks just don't like it. It's a different story. So the source of funds was just simply not accepted by the banks. And the company had a serious difficulty to put it on the tax return to actually declare these kind of crypto assets, because there was no space. There is no clear-cut indication that these are where you put your crypto assets. So there is no space on the tax return for such things. It was not back in 2019. The other question increased when we were thinking about that, how to actually justify this kind of profit. Is it realized or unrealized? It was not, we couldn't really cash out, but we wanted to cash it out. So how are we putting it on the financial statement? How are we justifying this kind of profit? Is it realized or unrealized profit? So there was a very interesting conversation about that too. But bottom line is that many times when you're introducing crypto assets in your operation, you try to accept funds from your clients through crypto assets, you will need some help. You will need a person who is advising. It could be your accountant or lawyer or both, or even a payment person who can help you. But let's see how to take advantage of this confusion and crazy scenario. Be always up to date. If you have a company, if you're a freelancer, or even if you're a person, always see that which tax laws offer better conditions for you personally, because the difference can mean a lot. Information is obviously very important. What governments also give different grants and benefits, not just for you as an individual, but also in case that you want to start a new blockchain related activity, a new blockchain project. Many times we see that smaller countries, for example, Malta, is giving a lot of grants and benefits to blockchain projects which are not utilized. People just don't know about it. And you might actually find out that there is a lot of government funding and support in terms of startup incubation, in terms of government support, tax relief, or loan which you don't have to pay back, which is coming from the government just to support this new technology and help your project. So that's also interesting to see that what governments give grants and benefits to your case, and where are the better banking opportunities? Which country offers crypto-friendly banking and blockchain-friendly banking operations. And don't forget, it's better to ask than regret later. So every time when in doubt, always ask for a tax ruling, because it doesn't cost a lot to have it, but it can cost a lot not to have it when you need it. So just to summarize, always keep your eyes open. Information is actually the most valuable asset that you have. Ask your peers, because if something worked for someone, it doesn't mean that it will work for you, but it's actually a very good food for thought just to sniff around that area and just to direct your attention or your professional colleagues' attention on these kind of areas. Always ask your peers what is working at the moment for them, and obviously be informed all the time. And as I mentioned, you will need a payment guy, a payment person, someone with a deep industry experience and network when it comes to banking, because it looks like that this whole payment industry, it starts to live on its own. But in this online world, it's very, very important to understand what are your opportunities and what are your costs, which are related mainly when we are talking about a higher risk activity, such blockchain or any kind of crypto related activities. So you can reach me anytime at victoria@pspangels.com or Skype me at Victoria Scholtes. I'm usually posting all my speaking engagements and we're being on LinkedIn. So you can follow me on LinkedIn as well and be up to date with everything what I do. And feel free to find me personally as well if we happen to be in the same country. I'm very keen to hear about your stories and have a chat in case that you have any further questions. So that was my little presentation that I brought to you. Thank you very much for actually inviting me and having the opportunity that I can talk about this. And let me know in case that you have any other questions or any other queries about everything that I said. I'm not quite sure how to close sharing screen, but maybe I can just leave it on as this. And yeah, let me know in case that is there anything else that I can talk about.
Thank you very much, Victoria Scholtes. We are very happy to listen to your experiences because as Istanbul Aydın University Blockchain Academy, we are the first one approved by the Turkish university regulator to have this academy. And with our blockchain talks, our aim is to spread the knowledge between our participants and also our students at the university. And I hope today we have learned and had listened to you about your experiences. You see also our VP for Blockchain Academy, Mustafa Takaoğlu, also on the screen now. And we are really very happy and proud to have you today as our guest speaker. And we hope to keep in touch with you. And I think we will take also the opportunity to contact you in case we have raised anything on the side of our university. And we are planning also to do the first, it is still on the talks, but we are planning to do the first Turkish blockchain, metaverse, and NFT forum summit. And we hope we will see you also, not like that hybrid. We hope to see you also in Istanbul.
Definitely. I'm coming to Istanbul a lot. So I would be very, very happy to visit you and have a bit deeper and more conversation about what you do. I think we are working towards the same goal here, encouraging everyone of adopting this new technology and highlighting the benefits of this new technology. And I think what you guys do, it's absolutely amazing, and it's a much, much needed knowledge what we can actually provide now to your students and all your audience. So I'm very happy that I was here today, and thank you very much for the invitation again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
May I ask actually a simple question to Ms. Victoria?
Of course, definitely, yes.
Thank you so much. Actually, that was a great, presentation. And I actually recently thinking about that. Whole countries try to create their own cryptocurrencies. So there are also another conflict that, we've seen that in Russian conflict with Ukraine. When things goes bad on some side, I'm not saying that this side is right, this side is wrong. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
But when they actually start closing their opportunities to each other, so is that maybe happen in the future for the countries? Like, let's say that we are creating our cryptocurrency using Hyperledger Fabric platform. And this is an American actually software. So at some point, let's say that in European countries has an actually a problem with United States. So what will happen? So this kind of softwares maybe in the future creates a problem. So in this topic, so what actually you are thinking about that we should use as a software platform to create our national cryptocurrencies?
It's a very, very interesting question, and I think it's very actual right now because all the conflict that we see, it's a very, very unfortunate situation what's happening in the world, and I am not technical at all, so I can only share my insights from the payment perspective. So what happened, for example, in Russia, that certain transactions and certain people got sanctioned. And obviously, we agree with the sanctions. The sanctions should be, executed. However, when there is a restriction, obviously people get creative. And many times we saw that, there are certain people who want to go around the sanctions and use crypto assets as means to do that. Now, obviously, these things should not be supported, but how the technology is built around this is that it's not regulated, and that is the problem when it comes to regulation. So what I understand is that there was a crypto regulation introduced a couple of weeks before the whole conflict started, which does not allow Russians, regardless of the war or the sanctions, it actually happened before, to own more than, I think it was $8,000 worth of Bitcoin per year. So there is a regulation around it. I'm not quite sure how the regulator is enforcing these kind of regulations to make sure that everything is according to the law. But what I see is that every country is trying to regulate crypto assets in their own manner, in a way that they can actually understand how the money moves within that country. Obviously, when we are looking at it from an economic point of view, the government uses the currency and the interest rate to influence some kind of decisions from the society. So, for example, if I'm releasing more currency to the country, then the inflation is going to go up. But according to Phillips curve, the unemployment rate is going to go down. So this is some kind of just it's a very vague example, but this is one means how the government is actually influencing the society's behavior through the currencies. Now, imagine that you're introducing a new unregulated currency in this equation. People are really buying and selling and using as a payment form. No one is checking anything. Of course, it's a bit of a mayhem. And every country is having a bit of a heart attack that how am I going to make sure that people are paying their taxes? As you mentioned, no one wants to pay their taxes if they don't have to, if it's not enforced. So how am I making sure that as a society, I'm still working normally? Everybody is playing by the books. No one is getting scammed. And we don't see what happened in the dark web using Bitcoin, selling illegal products and services. So, of course, the government is trying to do their own way how to regulate these cryptocurrencies. So the obvious choice for that is to create their own cryptocurrency as an alternative to the existing currency, which is being on the market at the moment. So for example, in America, the dollar. In Europe, there is the euro. In Turkey is the Turkish lira. And through these kind of blockchain, which you create a new blockchain around it, you try to regulate as much as you can. Because in this way, since you own the blockchain, you can really find out that which transaction happened when, and you can really trace the funds in a most efficient manner. So that is the reason that everybody is really trying to create their own cryptocurrency, because not just because the technology is obvious in the future that we cannot run banks which are running on Excel sheets anymore. We do need to keep up with the technology, because the blockchain indeed has a very, very good potential for these kind of transaction tracking and so on and so forth. And it is cheaper and it is easier and it is much more quick than the traditional banking means. But in the way that I own the blockchain and I own the data and I fully understand what is happening with the participants who are part of that blockchain through the local cryptocurrency. So my personal opinion is that this is how the government wants to join the game, in a regulated manner, in a more efficient way of increasing the transaction speeds and then reducing the cost, and also reducing the cost for compliance, because then bank A will believe in bank B of the source of funds. So one money which is being sent from one bank to another bank to another bank to another, not everybody needs to do the same compliance procedure, and it's going to be therefore much more cheaper and much more effective. So that's how I see definitely the future, and that will definitely affect a lot of aspects of how countries communicate with each other and how countries actually trade with each other. Because all those countries who already introduce these kind of technologies then can only trade with those kind of countries who have the same banking setup. Not to mention, for example, SWIFT network, right? If you have a country which is part of the SWIFT network, it's much easier to send money to another country which is part of the SWIFT network. If you don't have a SWIFT network banking facility, this might exclude you and all your banks from an international trading place, which could be obviously making some harm in your financial activities as a country. So yes, I think I can talk about this subject for ages, but yeah, this is how I see it from a payment perspective.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our today's guest was Victoria Scholtes, the CEO and the founder of PCP Angels. Thank you very much for participating. Mustafa Bey, thank you very much to our Blockchain Academy who make all the arrangements. We will see each other in May. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.